You're still Kirti. You were a minute ago.
So there's a Sanskrit root, which is kirt. And so that's the root, like the verbal root, which means to glorify or to praise. So you put different endings on it, and you get different words. For example, there's a neuter. Well, neuter means it's not masculine or feminine. There's one ending in Sanskrit, common ending, which is anam, and you get kirtanam, or as they say nowadays, kirtan. So that is a neuter ending, kirtanam. But then you can put a different ending, which is ti, which is a feminine ending, and then you get kirti. So it actually is like kirtanam. It's just like, take for example, I'll give you another example here. There's another Sanskrit root called bhaj. If you ever hear someone in America say bhajan, bhajan in Sanskrit means a container. So if they say let's do bhajan, they mean let's do containers. But actually, the real root is bhaj, which is pronounced exactly like the English word budge, like don't budge, just stay there. So that's bhaj. Now, if you add that same neuter ending, you get bhajanam, or they say bhajan. If you add the feminine ending, you get from bhaj, whoops. If you add here's the root. So if you add the feminine ending, and then there are different rules in Sanskrit. So the J then changes to a K, and you get bhakti. So the word bhakti, devotion, and the word bhajan or bhajanam come from the same root. They're just different endings. Anyway, I thought you might find that interesting. Anyone else have a Sanskrit name?
We all do.
Yeah. What's your name?
Not me. Leela.
Well, that's just easy. That's
Well, my middle name's also Amrita.
Is what?
Amrita.
Amrita. Okay, so let's do that. Amrita. First of all, you have a Sanskrit root, mur, vowel which means to die.
Oh.
Like, for example, yeah.
Don't worry, you have an I know.
So mriyate means he or she dies. Now, someone who's dead or who died is mrta. Mrta. So it's like, by the way, that's where you get English words like mortal or murder.
Or immortal.
Yes, exactly. Very good. So if you put means not, and we still have that in Sanskrit meaning, in English meaning not. Can anyone think of an English word where means not, or the letter A means not?
Okay. Anti. Just as a prefix, we just end a.
Yes.
Asymmetrical.
Exactly. Very good. And atheist, not a theist, an atheist. So that comes from Sanskrit. So Amrita means someone that doesn't die, immortal. Anyone else? Try your luck. What's your name?
Samya.
Samya. Okay. Samye?
Saumy.
Yes, Somya, actually. But it's okay. No one in America pronounces Sanskrit right, so don't worry about it. So, actually, the word, I'm going to turn on the see, since it's your name. There's a word soma, which has two, and so soma, it could mean soma rasa, because when they used to do ancient Vedic sacrifices, they would get this plant up in the Himalayan mountains. And today, no one knows which plant it was, like the knowledge is lost. And they would press it, and produce this beverage, this liquid, and they would drink it, and it actually like give them these powers or make them, like sort of godly powers. So that's soma. And the word soma also means the moon. It means the moon. It's very interesting because India is a very hot country. I mean, a lot of the year, it's like ridiculously hot. And so therefore, especially in North India. So therefore, it's very interesting. In India, shade is like very positive, like the shade of your lotus feet, or the moon, because the moon comes out at night when everything cools off. So like Krishna Chandra, the Krishna moon, or Gaura Chandra. the Gora moon. So shade and the moon are very positive symbols in a hot country, in India. But in Northern Europe and North America, where the problem is it gets very cold, shadow is like, ooh, it's like spooky, like in the shadows. So you get all these, ghost movies and everything. So it's interesting because shade, of course, shade and shadow are sort of the same word. So in a hot country, shade is very positive. In a cold country, shadows are spooky. So anyway, because we're talking about India, where the moon is very positive because it comes out in the evening when it cools off. So Soma, the moon, is very positive. It means like serene, like really peaceful and nice and cooling and comforting. And so from the word Soma, moon, you get Somya, which means having the quality of Soma, which means it extends your life and it refreshes you. So that's what Somya is. Okay, that'll be, don't worry. When you grow up and become rich, don't forget to explain your name. So, any other names? Try my luck. I should win prizes for doing this. You? Goranga. Okay. Gora, you probably know, can mean like golden. Write it so you can read it. And so Gora means golden or light. And Anga is a word meaning body. So Goranga means golden body. That was easy. What? You'll be rich too, yes. I'm counting on all of you to take care of me in my old age. So, anyone else? What's that? Aradhya. Okay. Can do that. Let's see. H. Oh my God. What did I have for breakfast? So Aradhya, the root here, just like in math, that means a root symbol. So the root of this is actually Rad, which means to worship. So that root Rad, and so in Sanskrit can intensify the meaning of something. So Arad means like to really worship, and the Y is very interesting. How could you? So the Y is very interesting because the Y, if you put a Y from Arad, you can say Arada or Aradhana, which just means worship. But when you put the Y in, it's like the English suffix able, as in, for example, plan ahead, worshipable. In other words, worship means to worship, and worshipable means you should worship someone. So the Y does that in Sanskrit. So Aradhya means worshipable. And the worshipable person is, of course, Krishna and all his friends. How about you?
My name's Kanai, K-A-N-A-I.
Oh, Kanai. That's a name for Krishna. And like that? Is that it? Yeah, because in India, they're of course Sanskrit. Sanskrit was sort of the language of the Brahmins, the scholars, and so on. But meanwhile, on the ground, as they say, there were, of course, India has many regional languages, and so Kanai, and also very intelligent people. It's not like, unintelligent people spoke the other languages. And so Kanai is the name of Krishna in one of sort of a word that everyone understood. And so it's Krishna. So congratulations. Anyone else?
Radhe.
Oh, that's too easy.
Davaneshwari is the other part of India.
Okay, we can do Vrindavaneshwari. Vrinda, of course, is no, it's not. It's not the vowel or. Vrinda, of course, is Tulsi. And Vana, what does Vana mean?
Forest.
Very good. Very good. So Vrindavana, and there's a Sanskrit root, long I H, which means to control, to govern things, to have power over things. And so you get different words from that root each, like for example, Isha, like the Isha Upanishad, which means the Upanishad of the Lord. And also there's another word from the same root, Ishvara, which just means the Lord. And to make it feminine, you just put a long I, Ishwari. So Vrindavana Ishwari, Vrindavana Ishwari. Anyone else?
My name is Gandharvika.
Gandharvika, okay. So Gandharva, anyone know, what are Gandharvas?
Demigods.
Yeah, they're sort of like,
A certain species.
a what?
of God.
A what?
A certain species.
Exactly, they're sort of like semi-demigods. They're not, I mean, they're not like rulers of the universe, but they are above human beings. They're often associated with music, they're like celestial musicians. They also have powers, and sometimes they kill people.
Oh yeah.
Can anyone know, remember, anyone know, that's the Mahabharata. Who did the Gandharva kill, yes?
They killed a lot of Duryodhana's soldiers when they wanted to taunt the Pandavas.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right, the Gandharvas. Also Shantanu, the great king, very good. The great king Shantanu had a son named Chitrangada who was killed by Gandharva.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of better when they just stick to music. Anyway, so that's, and of course, a feminine, Gandharvi would be a woman, and then Gandharvika means like, it's sort of an affectionate term for, you know Spanish, right?
Yes.
Do you know the suffix ito? Like, for example, what does this mean? El libro. Yes? What's that? Book. Yeah, it means the book. Read is leer, means to read. So el libro, yes.
Ito means little.
Ito.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, in Spanish, if you say el libro, it just means the book. Oops. But if you say el librito, especially in Mexican accent, el librito, then that means,
booklet.
yeah, exactly. Very good. Booklet or just little book. Or la casita. What does that mean, la casita?
Little house.
The little house. Sanskrit has the same thing. But Sanskrit does ito or ita or sito, like madrecita, the little mother. Ay, madrecita. So Sanskrit does that. How does Sanskrit do that? Ito. Well, I'll tell you. Sanskrit does the same thing. It sort of can be affectionate, like if someone calls her mother madrecita, it doesn't mean she's very short. It can just mean like just like dear mother. Oh, well, it's like English mommy. It's like you can say mother or mommy when you're little displeased or angry. You can say mother, but under normal conditions you can say mommy. So Sanskrit does that by adding a ka or ika. And it has exactly the same meaning. Like, for example, gopika, which means like gopisita, like little gopi, or like the deer gopi. Or, for example, oops, sorry if I raised your name there. Doesn't mean you'll stop existing. So, unless you're superstitious. So, Radhika means like Radhasita, like dear Radha or little Radha, and same thing with Gandharvika. So who's Gandharvika again? Yes, there you are. So Gandharvika is Gandharvisita. It's like dear Gandharvi. And it's a name of Radharani also because she also is a master of music and of so many arts, and so in that sense she's called Gandharvika. Like the little Gandharvi. Or even the Cowherd Boys, for example, it's not always, sometimes it can just be You can just be ka. Like, for example, you probably heard this word gopaka, which means like, no?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. I still like you. So, go means cow, and pa means protector, sort of abbreviated form of pala, like Gopala. Gopala, the cow protector, the cow herder. Gopala, and then, or just Gopa. Gopa and Gopala basically mean the same thing. So, any more names? Going? Yes?
I'd like to ask my middle name.
Yes.
Sundari.
Sundari, well, that's easy. I was afraid you were going to say something I didn't know, and then I'd have to pretend like there's no meaning. Sundara, of course, means beautiful. And then you make the feminine by putting the long I, Sundari, so it means a beautiful woman.
We have Ananshi and Aurav.
Who?
Nobody said
We have a lot.
mine wasn't English.
Who's Devaki? Good morning, Devaki. So, Deva, you know, right? Means God, or a God. And by the way, we have, what English word do we have from the same Sanskrit root as Deva? Yes? Yes, divine. Because you have, for example, the way you say divine in Sanskrit is divya, which just becomes English divine. And then devaka or devaki, again, devaka means like a little god, or like a dear divine being. And then of course the feminine would just be devaki, Krishna's mother. Well, by the way, there's all kinds of Sanskrit in English. No one knows about it. A word which comes straight from Sanskrit, and this may surprise you, is Jupiter. That's right. Keep those donations coming in. I'll explain it to you. So, because the root, actually, a root for words like divya or divine in Sanskrit is actually dew. In fact, there's even a word diva. Yeah, like like a Hare Krishna sannyasi, a diva. Anyway, just kidding. So actually, diva actually means day. It means day because when the sun comes up, there's light. So anyway, dew is a root in Sanskrit, but you get divya, deva, and all that. And so if you dew, and then you put the word Peter, which means father, and you get Jupiter. Yeah, because there's a tendency sometimes to pronounce D-Y-U. I'll show you. Like, for example, take the word duty in English. In, like, do your duty. That one. So, in England, they actually pronounce it like this. Judy. Do your duty. So if you have that same, so in Europe, a D-Y can be pronounced like a J, like in England, Europe, duty, your duty. So if you use that same pronunciation here, you get Jupiter. I thought you might find that interesting. So, any other name, so Devaki, you've been selected, yeah? What's your name?
Me? Oh, Veda.
Oh, Veda. Okay, actually, we can do some interesting things with Veda also. Anyone know the root of Veda, where it comes from? The root? I mean, like, is vid, which is a Sanskrit verb meaning to know. And there's evidence, by the way, that in ancient India, a Sanskrit V was actually pronounced like an English W. And you still see that, you still get that. Take a word like how do you pronounce this? Like Swayamvara. How do you pronounce it? You pronounce like a W. Everyone pronounce it like a W, Swayam. Or for example, the word Swami. No, if you say Swami, it sounds like you're from East Europe. So actually, yes, everyone pronounced like a W.
Swami.
Exactly.
Why are you trying to say?
What's that?
I was saying, why is everyone trying to say it now?
Why what?
Thing. Why is everyone trying to say it?
Oh, why? I guess because we're having so much fun. But now, if you take the word vid and you pronounce the V like a W, and it means to know, you get an English word that has the same meaning.
Wisdom.
Yeah, wisdom or wit.
Witty. Witness.
Yeah, witty, witness, yes. Very good. Or what does someone else say? Wisdom. Wisdom, or actually from this vid, you also get English words like vision, video. See, here's the vision, video. The German verb, anyone know the German verb to know? In German, the word to know is
9.
wissen. Listen, to know. So anyway, so how did I get into that?
Veda.
Oh, Veda. Yeah, so obviously the word Veda from the same root, just Veda, knowledge, or the Vedas. Okay, anyone else? What's that?
Raj.
What's your name?
Raja.
Raja.
Yeah.
Okay, Vraja. Vraja actually means in Sanskrit sort of like a place where cows are herded. And so Vrindavan comes to be called Vraja. And Raja,
King.
so what English words do we have that come from Raja?
King.
Yes?
Rage.
What?
Rage.
Nope. Here's one. Royal.
Royalty.
Yeah, royalty. Reign, like to reign. To be a king over a country is to reign, yes?
I'm pretty sure rain is spelled REIGN.
Is it?
Yeah, there's 3.
You're right. I'm thinking of Spanish, reina. You're right. Very good.
Reins is like the horse's reins.
That's a different word. Yeah, to reign, and of course, like take the word Maharaja. Does anyone know what the Latin for this would be? Which is very similar, because Latin is very connected to Sanskrit.
No.
It would be Magna Rex. Yeah, so if you call your dog Rex, it's like king. So yeah, Magna. Now, you've heard of the Magna Carta? Like magnify, magnificent. All that Magna stuff
The great part.
is Sanskrit Maha. In fact, I'll show them one little thing. Are you interested in this stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I'll just show you one more little thing, how if you study how Western languages come from Sanskrit, one thing you notice is that there's a tendency, not always, but in many cases, a Sanskrit H becomes a Western or European G. Whoops, sorry. So I already gave one, so here's one example, which I've already given you. That is, oh my God. Maha becomes Magna. Again, the same thing, H becomes a G. Another example is the Sanskrit word aham. What does aham mean? I, like ahankara, like always thinking I. So aham means I. If you change the H to a G, and what you study is languages change over time, the consonants are more stable than the vowels. Like when people come from different countries here, they'll get the vowels wrong. But the consonants, so from aham, you just change the vowels and you get the Greek word ego. But again, it's the same H to G. Or for example, a word for a vehicle in Sanskrit is vahana. So what word do we get in Western languages from Vahana?
Vehicle.
Vehicle, yes. Also, we get the word wagon and Volkswagen. Because Volkswagen, the Wagen in Volkswagen is just Vahanan. And then one more, there's a Sanskrit word huta, which means invoked. Like when you call upon a deity, you pray to a deity. So that's called huta. And if you change the H to a G, you get the German Gott and the English God from this Sanskrit. So when you study how languages change, it's all these examples are just H turning into G. Anyone who stays awake through all this gets a prize. So, any other questions? Do you have any questions? Like, since you were, here you are, young age, in Krishna consciousness. So, if anything doesn't make sense to you, you can ask me. And the worst that can happen is you'll be expelled from the school. So, any questions? So, Nitya?
I didn't heard you. I had a lot of questions for Mark, and he's ready to tackle anything.
Yeah, the harder the question, the better. I mean, it's more fun if it's like an outrageous question.
Anything that you ever wondered, had doubt, couldn't figure out, didn't understand.
Like, why did Hare Krishnas do this? Or
Do you ever have any problems?
no?
You can't figure out, can't understand, wondered about. How did it come about?
Of course, if everything we do makes perfect sense to you, that's very nice.
Or any other questions from Marge? It doesn't have to be a doubt, just something you wanted to know. They're all perfectly realized.
I noticed. Yeah, actually, you guys are the future. Because now, we're adults or whatever we are. And so we have positions of responsibility, we make decisions, but you will grow up and then it'll be your world. And you'll have to decide the way you want the world to be or the way you want the Hare Krishna movement to be. So I was with Prabhupada many times when parents brought their little kids in to see Prabhupada. And because in those days, all the kids were little. I think there was one kid over 10 years old in the whole Iskcon in the world. So all the kids were little. And Prabhupada would always say the same thing. He'd kind of play with them a little. He'd give them some sweets. And then he would look at us very seriously. And he would say, take care of them because they are the future hope. I heard Prabhupada say it several times. So you are all the future hope. If this planet is going to be saved, and if Krishna consciousness is going to be spread, then ultimately it's you who will decide that. So it's good you get a very good education. It's not that in Vedic culture you shouldn't be educated. Actually, if you look at our line at the great acharyas going back, they were some of the greatest scholars in the world. Is there a cat for this? Oh, yeah, I don't want it to go hard. I remember one time, before I actually went to Harvard as a student, I was invited to speak at Harvard in the religion program on Krishna consciousness. So before my lecture started, I was received by the chairman of the Sanskrit and Indian Studies department at Harvard. He was a really nice guy. He's a famous scholar. And he began glorifying Rupa Goswami. He said that he was an intellectual giant. He was one of the leading scholars of his time. And so our tradition is very distinguished. A tradition of great intellectuals, philosophers, scholars. So you are supposed to ask questions. You are supposed to understand things and like, why do we do this? So like, the things we do, like you go in the temple, you bow down, like why do we do that? Or anything. I mean, there has to be a good reason for things. Because if you do something, you have to have a good reason to do it. At least that's the way I see it. So interesting, offering obeisances is something that was done in many parts of the world. It wasn't just India. I'll give you one story from the Old Testament. You know what that is, right? The Old Testament?
The Bible.
Yep. Yeah, the original Hebrew Bible. So the great king of Israel, going back to ancient times, like the most famous king of Israel was, anyone know? King David, I was thinking.
David.
Yes, David, King David. Solomon's also up there. So David decided he wanted to build a temple for the Lord because the Jews, they were in the Hebrew, they were slaves in Egypt. They came out of Egypt. That's called the Exodus. And then they were kind of wandering around Israel. They began farming. And so at a certain point, they really became like a nation. And they thought, we need to build a great temple for God. And so David wanted to build that temple. And he wasn't able to do it for various reasons, but his son Solomon actually finished the temple. And it's very interesting that, so I was going to say, so when David was looking for land, looking for some good real estate to build the temple, and David, King David, actually founded the city of Jerusalem, which is the modern capital of Israel, and it's called, Jerusalem is called the city of David. How do you say it in Hebrew? Huh? Il David? Yeah, the city of David. So he wanted to put the temple in a high place because in Israel, there's hills and even mountains. And so he wanted to find a high piece of land in Jerusalem where everyone could see the temple. And so he found this high land, which was good for building, and it belonged to some guy who was just threshing grains. They take grains and put them through this little simple machine to make flour. And so it's interesting. So he went there to talk to the owner to tell him that we want to use this land to build a temple. So when this simple man saw the king coming, he was so happy, he bowed down. He bowed down, touching his head to the ground. So much for the Hanukkah story about not bowing down. Anyway, so it was actually in other parts of the world also. So people used to offer obeisance. People used to bow down. And the idea is that if you are submitting to someone, in our case, we're surrendering to Krishna, or trying to, it's like you give your whole self. You give your body to God. You give your mind to God. You give everything. And so that was the idea behind bowing, that it's full submission. Because obviously, in very primitive terms, if you're down on the ground, someone's standing up, he has a big advantage. He can kill you or something. He can hit you over the head with something. So when you bow down to someone, it shows trust and it shows that you're surrendering to that person. So that's where the custom. It was actually done all over Asia. Yes.
Wait. You asked us about questions. I just had one that. Why do we say the prasadam prayer before eating prasadam?
Why do we see the prasadam?
Prayer before eating prasadam.
Oh, to remind us what we're actually doing. Because animals eat. I'm sure you've seen animals eat, dogs and cats, and they're not much formality there. And so the idea is that, let's say you're hungry and there's a nice plate of prasadam. It's like, your inner beast can come out. And so therefore, to remind us who I am, what I'm doing, what this food really is, we say it. So it's, so all the rules should have a purpose. If there's some rule for which there's no good reason, why am I doing it? We don't do rules just because, some people just like rules. They never met a rule they didn't like. And the more rules, the better. But ultimately, we should follow rules because they make sense. I'll show you. There's one verse, I can write it quickly, actually. It explains why we follow rules. It's a verse Prabhupada used to quote. Okay. Let's see. Try to fit it all in. Plan ahead. So, Smartavya. Got a letter. I can't believe it. You children are having a strange influence on me. Obviously, your faults. So, Smartavya. Does anyone know what Smartavya means? Does it sound like any other word? Yes.
To remember?
Well, you're on the right root, but it's a particular form. The Tavya. This Tavya, and this is a root of Smar or Smri, to remember. It means to be remembered. To be remembered, that which you should remember. So Smartavya Ksatata means what? Always Vishnu. Vishnu is always to be remembered. And then, whoops, Vismartavyo. That always used to bother me. The teacher erased the blackboard as a kid and she left some part that wasn't erased. Really, and it just bothers some people. I was one of the people that really bothered. So, Najatu Chit. So in Sanskrit, one of the ways you say forget is to disremember. Like to unremember, disremember. So V means not. So Vismartavyo, to be forgotten, na jatu chit, not ever. Never to be forgotten. Vishnu is always to be remembered, and never to be forgotten. Now, what's important, what you have to understand here, is that this is a positive injunction, like you must do this. Whereas this, is a negative injunction, you must not do that. So in Sanskrit, can I erase this?
Yeah.
Canción, canciones. So in Sanskrit, that's called a vidhi. A vidhi means an injunction, something you have to do, like do this. And nisheda is the opposite. It's a prohibition. You cannot do that. Like in Mayapur, there's little signs like "Don't pick the flowers." So they say nisheda, like it's forbidden to pick the flowers. So in English, sometimes how would we say this in English? What's that? Yeah, you can say just do's and don'ts. You can say do's and don'ts, or you can say injunction. The English word injunction means that you must do something. And exactly, prohibition. So, injunction, like you must do this, prohibition, you can't do that. So in Sanskrit, that's, okay, here it comes, it's coming now. Here it comes, get ready. So it said, sarve, which means what?
Sir?
All. Sarve, vidhi. So all injunctions and prohibitions, all do's and don'ts. So anything that anyone tells you, like do this and don't do that, must be Sue. Etayor in Sanskrit, like in English we have singular and plural, the books. But in Sanskrit they have singular, dual, and plural. You can say two of something. So etayor means, in this case, of these two. So what are the two we're talking about?
Do's and don'ts.
Exactly. So of these two, and specifically of this do and that don't. Always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu. So etayor of these two, etayor, eva, indeed, or only, kinkara. What does kinkara mean? Servant. Like what's that Lord Chaitanya's Shiksastika? Kinkaramang Visame. Exactly. So kinkara is very funny actually because kim in Sanskrit means what? And kara means to do. And we have words in English from the Sanskrit root to do, like create. So kinkara, what should I do? Because that's what a servant says. What shall I do? So kinkara, what should I do, is the name for servant. So the idea here is that these two injunctions, always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu, all of the injunctions, all of the do's and don'ts are servants only of these two. So the only reason to do something, like they say, you have to do this, is because it helps you remember Krishna and not forget Krishna. And the reason you're not supposed to do something is because it'll make you forget Krishna. And that's the justification. Otherwise, you can have this rule and that rule and the other rule. But why rules if they don't actually lead to Krishna consciousness? So actually we can do a little game here. Can you think of a rule for which there is no apparent justification? Like, why do we do this?
Like a Krishna conscious rule?
Yeah, Krishna conscious rule. Like you're told you have to do this or you can't do that. Because every rule, every time someone tells you you have to do this, or every time someone tells you you can't do that, it has to ultimately be advancing your Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, why would you do it?
Wait, do we have to think of one that doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
Well, that you don't see why.
Onion garlic?
What?
No onion garlic?
That's a really good question. Yes.
It's one of the modes of passion, I think.
Oh my God, we're going to talk mode of passion. A huge
It's
quantity of Mahaprasadam is the mode of passion. Yeah. What's interesting because frankly, sometimes there's not always consistency. For example, if you just live off Mahaprasadam, you will probably have the pleasure of dying at a young age because it's not so healthy. I mean, all this deep fried stuff and lots of sugar and lots of spice. I mean, I don't want to criticize, but it just makes you wonder, like, what should we offer to Krishna? But anyway, so the mode of passion, a lot of food which devotees eat is passionate because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes what food and passion is. Anyone know what that is? Yes?
Too spicy food.
Too spicy, too hot. Krishna specifically mentions too hot. It's like the International Society for Chili. So, but Krishna specifically says food which is very hot, which is not healthy, is not in the mode of goodness. So what about onion and garlic? Getting back to onion and garlic. So it must be more than just passionate because like things that are, very spicy are passionate. Any guess? Yes?
Like maybe because like when you eat it, like you like I don't know, it could make you like it's like not good and like it like makes your mind like less, so it could be harder to remember Krishna.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes.
Like just what she said, but just like it would make it harder to remember Krishna and like that you don't remember him or it like blocks you in
Yeah.
focusing on Krishna.
For example, just taking garlic, I knew a devotee who'd been in the U.S. Air Force, and he said that the pilots were told that an hour or two before they fly, they shouldn't eat garlic because it actually affected their response time. So you and then you, yes?
Oh, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to eat onion and garlic because I heard somewhere it's like made from the blood of Rahu or something like that.
Yeah, that's like a typical story. But actually, if you think about it, I mean, I'm not criticizing people that say that, but if you think about it, earth, I mean, they put the stool of animals on soil to enrich it, and then, they grow vegetables in that. So to say that garlic is actually made from the blood of bad people, I mean, exactly how does that happen? Okay, so you, and then we'll go around, everyone will get a chance, yes?
Also, I noticed that as in I don't ever remember anything like that, but I've heard that it gives you stinky breath, and also
Definitely is true.
I've even heard that some pilot flights make you wait 3 days between garlic and flights.
Yeah, actually, there's this restaurant in LA in this sort of fancy part of Los Angeles where everything has garlic, and the name of the restaurant is the Stinking Rose. Yes?
That makes sense.
So, on the topic of that type of food, we also are said not to eat mushrooms. But then I remember someone saying that Srila Prabhupada said that it would be okay to grow mushrooms if it's on temple property and it's grown in the garden. So why would that be allowed?
Well, things like that, I mean, you may notice that Krishna, I'll call on you now, so you don't get your arm tired. It's, you may notice that there aren't Shastra verses, not the Bhagavatam says, thou shalt not eat mushrooms or something. And so these are details. They're not basic principles. I mean, and another point is, if a particular food is not healthy, there should be a scientific reason for it. There should be in other words, it should be because it should be that you can study chemically, physiologically, whatever. It's actually shown to have some detrimental effect on the body. I'm not saying that we should eat onion and garlic. I'm just saying though, because we're explaining it, let's say to non-devotees, we're trying to explain Krishna consciousness to intelligent people, not superstitious people, but intelligent people, and we say you can't do this, we have to give a good reason for that. And so, you should get educated and study these things and come up with intelligent reasons for these things. Because if you tell people, don't do this or you have to do that, and there's no good reason, they're not going to be very impressed. So yes.
Like why you can't eat onion and garlic, I think like because when you go on the altar or something like that. Sure.
But there should be some reason. For example, and some of the reasons are just not really true. Like for example, they say you can't wear stitched clothing on the altar. You ever heard that one? Like why? Like I mean, that's something that to me just makes no sense. That's just me. I don't want to corrupt all of you, but the point is when someone tells me this is a rule, if there's a good reason for it, then I'll follow it.
What is stitched clothing?
Stitched like you sew it.
Like what? I mean,
But that's like anything other than a piece of cloth that is not.
Like a whole cloth. Yeah, if something is sewed, and to me, I have to be honest, it makes no sense to me. But some people say that. Yes.
or like you can only wear dhoti kurta or chador to the temple.
Yeah, I mean those are rules. And so, for example, yesterday I gave a lecture in the temple on Sunday. So we're a dhoti because when in Rome, do as the Romans do. When in a Hare Krishna temple, do as the Hare Krishnas do. So we should be ladies and gentlemen. If we go to a temple and they have certain rules, we follow it just to be civilized. But like take the word dhoti, which is not actually a Sanskrit word, so it's not actually found in any Shastra. But anyway, I don't want to confuse all of you. But I mean, again, if we live in a community, we should be nice and just follow the rules of the community because we're living there. But I hope, when you grow up that you will be intelligent and study so that we can present a scientific version of Krishna consciousness and convince intelligent people that whatever we do it because we have good reasons to do it. And those reasons can be verified. And I think if we present Krishna consciousness in that way, we can attract intelligent Western people to join this movement as a spiritual science, not just a religion. It's supposed to be a spiritual science where everything we're doing, we can explain reasonably why we do it. And we do have very good reasons to chant Hare Krishna, to follow our principles. There are very good scientific reasons to do all that. So, anyway, I'll stop here before I get myself in more trouble. So, thank you all very much, and I hope you'll grow up and save the world. That would be a very nice thing for you to do. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Like Socrates, corrupting you.
It's nice to go back and give us a lot of your time.
Yes.
Yeah, well,